Hey, what's going on, everybody? Right now, you're listening to the That's Textbook Sports podcast. Make sure you subscribe. Follow me on social media. The links to my social media will be in the description, so go ahead and check that out. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit the bell, turn on post notifications. You don't want to miss any of the content that I have coming up in the coming weeks, especially as we gear towards draft season. Appreciate all of y'all who have done that so far. And of course, we're going to be talking about the Super Bowl, breaking it down with the Kansas City Chiefs, starting off with Mahomes, Reed, Steve Spagnuolo, talking about a couple of pieces that they have defensively that I think played a huge role in Kansas City winning the Super Bowl, talking about their general manager, Brett Veach, and what he's done with this roster. All of those things, talking about San Fran, where it went wrong for them, where I felt like they could have capitalized, and where maybe playing tentative and not aggressively really hurt them in this game. Of course, right now, that's it for the intro. And of course, you all know, that's textbook. So let's start it off. First off, I think we have to say congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs. They're officially starting their dynasty right now. For Patrick Mahomes, let's start off right there with Patrick Mahomes. In the, I believe, 6 years that he's been a starter, he's won 3 Super Bowls, 3 Super Bowl MVPs, 2 MVPs, 2-time league leader in passing yards, a 6-time Pro Bowler. Just a fantastic resume to start off. What he's done, not only resume wise too, but then having that Jordan like X factor where you can never really count this guy out. You can't count him out. He has that just edge mentality where he's despite the other team having a better roster and a lot better defense, what the opposing team has, it doesn't even matter with this guy at times. Just incredible what he's done. Like you look at it, his first year he wins MVP, kind of a rookie. He's rookie wise in terms of like play time. Although his rookie year he did start that final regular season game against Denver. But that first year that he's a starter sets the league on fire, wins MVP, throws for, I think, 50 passing touchdowns he had that year. And they got so close. And one of the reasons why they didn't win in his first year and didn't go to the Super Bowl, and I think had they did, they would have been Super Bowl champions. But that reason was because it was their defense. Then they fire their defensive coordinator. They get things rolling with Steve Spagnuolo. Now they're able to get over that hurdle. They're able to get over that hump. And I know that's a lot more about the defense coordinator than Patrick Mahomes, but it's just, I think it also showcases that football is a overall team thing, right? No player is greater than the whole entire team, except if you have that football player at the most important position. That's an X factor. That is a Jordan Brady X type of generation. Just a generational talent within himself, right? And then of course we're gonna get to, and there's gonna be a lot of talk about where are we placing him? Are we placing him right next to Tom Brady? Or are we placing him above Tom Brady as the GOAT? I'll say this, I think if you want to have that conversation, you're rightfully obliged to because of what he has done in the league, and not only just, I think this is his most impressive Super Bowl because you look at what they had to deal with offensively, right? It was a roller coaster year for Kansas City. We go back to the first regular season game. Kadarius Toney drops that easy pass, winds up into the Detroit Lions defensive player's hands, goes for a pick six. Then he drops that pass, which would have essentially won them the game. Marquez Valdez-Scantling is dropping passes. Travis Kelce this year hasn't looked the same. They lose up against the Raiders on Christmas Day. They lose up to the Philadelphia Eagles with that MVS drop. And then it continues with the Green Bay Packers game. And I talked about it earlier this year. Like, we saw Patrick Mahomes how fired up he was, or not fired up, but angry he was that the official called that offsides penalty on Kadarius Toney when it was clearly an offside. But I was looking at that saying it wasn't Mahomes much so mad at the call. I think it was just his overall frustration with how the season has gone and that it was getting to be a toll on him. And he was looking like a lot different player. But you can never count these types of players, these players that we consider to be GOATs, out. Like even when Brady was down 28-3, you never counted him out. When Patrick Mahomes was down 24 up against the Houston Texans, when he's down 10 in the Super Bowl twice up against the San Francisco 49ers, right? You just can't count this guy out. It's the reason why we're having these conversations, or we're allowing to have these conversations to say he's the Michael Jordan of football and he's the GOAT. Now, I'm still gonna deflect and go back to Tom Brady being the GOAT because I think if we're saying Mahomes is the GOAT right now, we're acting into recency bias. Now he has started off the script tremendously well. But then how else is he going to finish that? Looking at it probability wise, it was the worst roster offensively, but defensively it was the best in Mahomes' tenure. And they're still able to win the Super Bowl. And the fact is, they're going to add a lot more better talent to that roster on offense. They're going to get a Mike Evans, a T. Higgins in free agency, a player of that caliber, whether that be free agency or the draft. So, tremendous credit to Patrick Mahomes. But then I think we also have to go to Andy Reid as well. And it's not just like sole credit. Like there's pieces of the pie that go to the credit for each player and staff on the Kansas City Chiefs. But there are some that have a lot more that they gave into it than others, right? So Mahomes, he deserves a lot of credit. But I also think we have to go back to Andy Reid. Like Andy Reid, he had really good teams with the Philadelphia Eagles. He went to the Super Bowl, and before he won a Super Bowl and was able to get over that hump, we were talking about him like he's a great offensive mind, but in the playoffs his teams fall short. He lets go. He gets let go from the Philadelphia Eagles, goes to Kansas City, trades up in the draft to select Patrick Mahomes when they had a good base and environment for a rookie quarterback, and then it just blossoms, right? And the things he was able to dial up in that game, just incredible. Like San Fran played defensively; they played a fantastic game. They were able to hold Kansas City overall to 25 points, right? But it's also how you finish that game. San Fran defensively played a fantastic game early on, but they weren't able to finish late. And I thought late that they were giving Kansas City a lot of easy looks. Like it was obvious man looks and with not a whole lot of pressure. But the thing is, had they brought pressure, it was like that big play in the fourth quarter with Travis Kelsey. It's man across all the board. And the leverage for these defensive backs and for the guys that are guarding the receivers for San Fran was outside leverage. And that puzzled me because you think if you're going all man, you'd want to have inside leverage knowing that there's no help that way. It's a I guess somewhat of like it's a somewhat basically like a screenplay. You're having some of your receivers go one way of the formation while one player goes a different way. Sort of a pick play, screenplay. Kelsey gains yards. He gets them inside the 15. Kansas City's able to kick that field goal, right? And then on the third down to Rashee Rice when he gets that reception I think it was an overtime period. It's a big chunk play. Reed, they were dialing things up. And then the last play of the game, I think they called it corn dog. You get the shift motion, but the receiver doesn't go to the opposite side, the different side of the formation. They stay right there. And they go for a flat route, sort of a pick play, game over. So Andy Reid, just his offensive brilliance, it continues to show. And then going on to a different coach on that staff, Steve Spagnuolo. As I mentioned when I was talking about Mahomes, the reason why they didn't win was because his defense in that first year, they were able to give some things up. Now they were going up against someone we consider a GOAT and an all-time great in Tom Brady, right? But they bring Steve Spagnuolo in, and now they're able to win these Super Bowls. Now the defense isn't giving up things. They're able to get pressures. The pressures that they dialed up just real, like just it was just pure. I can't talk right now. It was just pure brilliance that they were able to draw up from those pressures. Pressures from the slot corner, the unique formations that they were able to get into those, really impressive. And then Trent, like Kansas City, they draft well, and then the coaches are able to develop these players. Trent McDuffie, L'Jarius Sneed, probably I would say in the league the best 1-2 punch all year that I think we took for granted and really didn't realize or underrated a whole lot. They were fantastic this game. Trent McDuffie with the pass breakup on Deebo Samuel, they were able to get up into the San Fran wide receiver's face, make a lot of those wide receivers try to play wide receiver like Deebo Samuel. He's not so much, he's more of an H back than a wide receiver, and they were trying to have him force him into some releases that he wasn't comfortable with, route running, those sorts of things. They were able to keep Brandon Ayuk in check, who I consider their true wide receiver. Jennings had a good game, but the defense in all, just creating pressures from that interior defensive line with Chris Jones. Quarterbacks, they hate pressure of all sorts, but if you're going to pick and choose what type of pressure you want it from the outside, from like the tackle spots, because it's a lot longer of a path to the quarterback, and you're able to work with something there. If you're a quarterback, you don't want pressures from the interior of that defensive line, and then have to make a quick decision like that with someone coming full speed at you, wanting to take your head off. So defensively, the brilliance of Steve Spagnuolo shows once again. And then final part, talking about the Kansas City Chiefs and the reason or in their path to this dynasty and their type of Super Bowl success is the general manager, Brett Veach. What they're able to do, drafting wise, and then having the right coaches to be able to develop a lot of these guys. Really impressive. And then the biggest thing and what's going to get a lot of attention is they traded Tyreek Hill, a Hall of Fame wide receiver, one of the best wide receivers in the existence of the NFL, and you could make the argument in the game right now. All of those assets that they were able to get just helped this team so much better, and I think it's a good example to show that yes, you'll have star players on your team, right? They're gonna eat up a lot of cap. Some are okay with that because the star players are gonna play like star players, right? But the value you could get off of that to help build your team, and when you have a Hall of Fame quarterback like a Patrick Mahomes, to put in the resources like to get a Trent McDuffie in the draft, to go get another pass rusher like George Karlaftis, and have all these resources to allocate to building the best overall football team to win a championship. Really impressive job. And I would say the most impressive Super Bowl the Kansas City Chiefs have had, right? Like we know last year's, that one was pretty impressive. In my opinion, this one tops it when you consider all the variables that they had with the general manager, Brett Veach, Steve Spagnuolo, what he did with the defense, Andy Reid, what he continues to do with the offense, and then Patrick Mahomes becoming one of the best, if not the best, quarterback in the NFL, in football existence. All of those things collected into building a champion, winning a championship back to back for the second straight year. And here's the one thing that really shocks me and is just eye popping with the Kansas City Chiefs. They're able to have all this continued success. Like we haven't seen, it's been a decade since we saw a team go back to back. And you see it like with the Baltimore Ravens and all these other teams that had really good years, but they weren't able to win it all. It wasn't their assistant coaches. They go on to become head coaches on different teams, but yet the Kansas City Chiefs are able to keep the main core and the main nucleus of their roster with not a whole lot of staff turnover. Like Spagnuolo he's not getting interviewed for head coaching jobs. We saw Bieniemy wasn't getting interviewed for head coaching jobs. Now it's looking like the enemy is going to be coming back onto this roster next year. It's just a huge warning sign. And if you're a fan of any team in the NFL not named the Kansas City Chiefs, you're wondering they have an all-time great at quarterback, a guaranteed Hall of Famer. They have a brilliant offensive-minded head coach. Not a whole lot of staff turnover with this team. They're going to be investing more resources for Patrick Mahomes on that offensive side of the ball too. How do we stop these teams? And if you're a fan, you just feel like, man, maybe we just throw in the towel. Like it feels impossible to beat these guys, even when they had their worst roster offensively with this unit. Congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs, what they're able to do, back-to-back champions, really impressive, and the start of a dynasty. Now switching back to the San Francisco 49ers. Why in these types of games I always think of like what was the reason why this team lost? Like you're able to get to this moment, and not a whole lot of teams are able to get to the Super Bowl, right? And yet somehow, some way, it didn't happen for them. And much like there was a lot of factors with the Kansas City Chiefs winning the Super Bowl, there's a lot of factors as to why the San Francisco 49ers didn't win the Super Bowl. One of those being is early, their defense was playing lights out. Like the defense all year has kind of been suspect for them, but then in the biggest game and in the biggest moment, they were able to have their best game. That went huge for them, but when you're facing someone like a Patrick Mahomes, you have to put them away early, or you have to get a substantial lead. Now, if it was 17-3 or 24-3, was it a outright guarantee that San Fran was going to win the game? No, but you feel a lot better and you feel a lot more, I guess, a little bit more comfortable if you're up a lot more as opposed to your defense is playing an A-plus game and yet we're only up 10-3 or we're only up 10 points. And I felt like in that moment when Mahomes threw the interception to the rookie safety, I felt like, okay, that's their chance. They're going to ground and pound this game out with Christian McCaffrey. And yet, their first play after that interception was a throw. And as a matter of fact, the next two drives, they didn't run the ball. They didn't establish it enough. And that's been one of the biggest issues for Kyle Shanahan is he doesn't establish the run enough and consistently. Like, and it's puzzling because they'll get games where the rushing attack is just absolutely dominant. They're getting 5 yards per carry and so forth. And then somehow, some way, he decides or elects not to stick with the running game. And McCaffrey had 22 carries in this game, but it felt like he should have had more, and they could have maybe used Deebo Samuel a bit more in the rushing offense, like how they have in the regular season. Didn't feel that same consistency regular season in postseason with using Deebo Samuel in the ways that you have in the regular season, rushing wise. That one up there really hard to swallow if you're San Fran. And then I'd say the biggest one for me is you have 3rd and 4, close to the end of a regulation. I think it was a minute or inside a minute. And you don't get it. Is there pass protection issues? There were. For the San Francisco 49ers, there was pass protection issues all game for them. And even in my Super Bowl preview, the last podcast I had recorded, my main issue with the San Francisco 49ers offensive unit was that interior of the offensive line. They struggled to move guys. They struggled to get up to the next level for their blocks. That was a weak unit, but really overall, everyone on the offensive line outside of Trent Williams all year has been inconsistent and below average. Trent Williams didn't have his best game this game, but just speaking for that unit as a whole. And I mean, it reared its ugly head today. Like Chris Jones, he was able to get a lot of those pressures, interior pressures. First, force Brock Purdy to use his legs when his athletics isn't his best attribute and condense the pocket. that's what Kansas City was able to do. And I felt like it was a huge missed opportunity to just elect to go for the field goal. Because if you're going to give the ball back to Kansas City, the what they're going to do is they're going to get some kind of points, whether that be a field goal or a touchdown. Those 4 points are costly. I felt like San Fran both of the times at the end of regulation and in overtime when it was 3rd and 4 should have went for it. And then we can talk about the overtime, whether they understood the overtime rules. You knew Kansas City, they're like with Patrick Mahomes in that type of scenario, you're going to give him 4 downs to get 10 yards, and at the very least, he's going to get a field goal. Huge missed opportunity there. I didn't agree, something I didn't agree with. Still don't. And then there's the element of like sometimes you have to be a little bit lucky. Like San Fran has known luck this postseason on both sides of the spectrum, whether that be good or bad. Like we can point to the Detroit Lions. Should have been an interception, but hits the defender's helmet. Brandon Ayuk makes that spectacular catch, propels the 49ers to win in that game. And then special teams. You miss the kick, or the kick gets blocked. That was huge and costly, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. And then the fumble, the punt return fumble, it hits your guy's shoes, and Ray McLeod tries to pick it up and try to make something do. I thought in that situation you just fall on the ball and keep the possession. Kansas City was able to score a touchdown, and they get led back into that game. A lot of various factors why San Fran isn't a Super Bowl champion and why they let that game slip away from them. And going back to special teams is it's called special for a reason because sometimes in a lot of these close games it's a deciding factor for the team to win or lose the game. And here it felt costly. Like you look at it, the Kansas City Chiefs special teams outplayed the San Francisco 49ers special teams. And we can talk about the blocked field goal, and then we can talk about the fumble recovery, the missed field goals that San Francisco had. And like I said, overall general, a lot of reasons why Kansas City won, and then a lot of reasons why San Fran lost. But that's not to take anything away from the Kansas City Chiefs. It was their toughest path to the Super Bowl, yet they were still able to be Super Bowl champions. And if you're the San Francisco 49ers, with the talent that you have on that roster, you have to go. I mean, you can't just outright, feel sorry for yourselves, quit. You have to go back to the drawing board. And even though you had all that talent, find something as to why that team just can't get over the hurdle. And I'll say this, like we can it's deserved, and I'll accept it to be harsh on Kyle Shanahan. And I don't think there should be a whole lot of blame with Brock Purdy because he looked the part. Like he wasn't turning the ball over. He'd made some throws that he needed to. Now, when you're dealing up against an all-time great like Patrick Mahomes, you're gonna have to ask a little bit more from your quarterback because there have been more from Brock Purdy, yeah. But he's not the reason why that team lost the game. Like he went 22 of 38, 222 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Kansas City has a 51% blitz percentage. In this game, when Kansas City was blitzing the San Francisco 49ers, Brock Purdy went, I think, 12 of 19 for 189 yards, and I think it was 1 touchdown. I may or may be wrong on that. If I am, let me know in the comments. But still, Purdy wasn't the reason why you lost this game. I think the two big factors in why you lost, you didn't keep up with the run in Christian McCaffrey, and just the passiveness. The passiveness when you're trying to slay the beast. You don't want to give Patrick Mahomes any chance at all, but then they gave him a second, a third, a fourth chance. You give him that many chances, they're going to bite you in the rear, and that's what happened for San Fran. And so, not entirely done with the Super Bowl. This third segment going to be devoted a little bit more to like specific plays within this game. I think there's one play out there that not a whole lot of people are paying attention to. And it was in overtime. San Fran is driving down the field. They're in the red zone. I think they're near the 10-yard line or they're at the 15-yard line. Kittle had gotten hurt, so he's going back to the locker room, and the broadcast had showed him on the sideline. What they bring in for their backup tight end, and I don't know this player's name. All I saw was their number, and it was number 9. And I'm like, okay, thinking of it formation wise, Shanahan likes to do a lot of interesting things within the formation. He's an offensive genius, right? For the Super Bowl, he might have a couple of tricks up his sleeve. But and in this, like, I can see you going with different things formation wise, but in this game, giving someone a snap who hasn't played for you, hasn't given a whole lot of minutes in the regular season in this type of game, something that was really interesting to me. So I was like, okay, what? I've never seen number 9 in any of these formations or being on the field with San Fran. What's he doing on this play? Is there something up Shanahan's sleeve? Well, then they run the ball to Christian McCaffrey and they run it to number 9 side. And what ends up happening is it's a holding call on number 9, so it pushes them yards back. Just huge. And then I think it goes to like second. I can't remember the exact distance, but it was second and long then. And now you're having to play catch up in a game and then up against a player that you don't want to be playing catch up against. Costly, huge play. Huge, could have decided the game. Decided the game one way or the other. Had that penalty not happened, San Fran probably gets a first down. Now, Kansas City, with the overtime rules being changed, is going to get the ball back, but still something huge, right? And then we go into that 3rd and 4, San Fran's last possession in in regulation. They have George Kittle lined up in the backfield. You have Christian McCaffrey to the top of the screen, lined up at wideout, and at the bottom of the screen, you have Juwan Jennings as your number 1. You have Brandon Ayuk in the slot. They're running double slants. In Kansas City, they had showed pre-snap a man look. It was man across the board. Now Spagnuolo, he likes to throw a lot of unique blitzes, right? And within blitzes, especially when they're man, like you can see, okay, there's a slot corner, but on that slot corner, almost directly behind them, but a couple yards back, there's a safety right there. So they could be throwing down that slot corner, or they could be throwing down the safety on a blitz, crashing down to the line of the scrimmage. And they had on that play, and I was like, okay, Shanahan, offensive genius. He has Kittle in the backfield. That's a formation. Maybe we've seen it a couple times in Shanahan's tenure, but we haven't seen it a lot this regular season. So Shanahan, being an offensive genius, probably has a trick up his sleeve with Kittle in the backfield. Kittle's going to run some kind of option route, most likely with a man look. It's going to be in the middle of the field. You like that sort of play. Instead, they have him blocking, and you got to give credit to Kansas City because it's a unique blitz. They go with McDuffie. He's on Brandon Ayuk, and he backpedals, but he times the snap up just right to where he blitzes, able to put pressure on Brock Purdy, and not bat the throw down. Huge play because I thought, okay, San Fran's going to use Kittle, and he's to the middle of the field on some kind of option route. And instead, they elected to have him block, and I just Kittle is a good blocking tight end, but on a play like that, in that kind of instance, having him block as opposed to running the route just sort of puzzled me. Now, for the Kansas City side, it's like I said, I can't remember the exact down and distance, but I know it was late in the 4th quarter. San Fran goes with a man look. Instead, the guys that they have covering the Kansas City's eligible wide receivers, they have outside leverage. Usually, if you play man, you want to have inside leverage just because you want the leverage where the help's going to be, right? Or where the help isn't. In Kansas City, with Andy Reid's offensive genius, has some of his wide receivers go to one side of the formation, kind of like a pick kind of screen. Have Travis Kelce go the other way, and it results in that huge 30-yard gain. Now Kansas City's at the 10-yard line. It's 9 seconds or 10 seconds left. Now they have the chance to get 2 plays at a shot at the end zone to win the Super Bowl. A questionable call from the San Francisco 49ers defensive coordinator Steve Wilks, but then again, a brilliant call with that look by Andy Reid. And then an overtime with Rashee Rice. Basically, kind of the same play like Travis Kelce, but they have Rashee Rice to the bottom of the screen in the slot close to the tackle, and they're just able to. Kansas City runs their crossing routes, their pick plays, somewhat of an extension of a screen, free leverage. Free leverage inside, free release, huge play on third down. They pick up the first down, move the chains, and Rashee Rice after the catch, really explosive, and he's got some really special speed. Those were a couple of plays, in my opinion, that really put the game plays we probably don't value as much. Maybe some we do within that assortment or collection as opposed to others, but really crucial plays that in a game of this magnitude, one play can be the deciding factor in the game. And so that's it for the Super Bowl coverage and this NFL regular season, NFL season in general, 2023-2024. It was really special to spend this time in this podcast with a lot of y'all. I really appreciated it. It was fun. Got to interact with a lot of you here in the comments on social media. It was a privilege. It was a blessing to interact with all y'all and spend an NFL season with you. I'm excited to see what the future brings and the future holds within the NFL. And then, of course, like I said, interacting with y'all. It's a privilege. It's a blessing. It's fantastic to interact with y'all and talk football, those sorts of things. Now, moving forward, it's going to be a little bit about football. The podcast will change. They're not going to be, specific game podcasts. Obviously, it's going to be more so about film breakdowns. I've got 2 of them right now with Olu Fashanu, Penn State left tackle, Jerzon Newton, Illinois defensive tackle. Go ahead and check those out. But it's going to be more so of that type of content. Specific team related, specific team rebuilding, short mini videos, not the 30 or 50-minute podcasts that you've become accustomed to. And I'm thinking about going live on this channel, doing a couple, answering some of your questions that you have while on live. And yeah, I just, keep posted with this content. Hit that notification bell. We're gonna have a lot of different content coming up in the upcoming weeks. Of course, going to be talking about NBA, doing a lot more different sports as well, MLB. So just keep posted within this channel. I greatly appreciate all of y'all, the time I've spent with you during this NFL season, in the postseason as well, in the off season. Draft time is a fun time. Free agency is going to be berserk. It's going to be chaotic and fun. And all the more we have to just create, all the more just to talk football. And even though the regular season ends, football and sports is a constant evolving thing. So that privilege that we get. Thank you all for listening. I appreciate it. And until next time, deuces.